All right, so last time we talked a little bit about hip hop and apologetics, right?
Yep, hip hop. What I am a cultural expert on. True story.
So there was a point that I actually kind of forgot to mention that I probably should include in here because I think it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about. But so there was a shift in hip hop, a drastic shift, and as far as I can tell, I think it started with Lil Wayne. When Lil Wayne came out with, like, I think it was his first Carter CD or something like that, he had this different style where it was no longer about this kind of deep content and stuff like that. It was just about a feeling that he was selling people. And Lil Wayne, he's out, one of the most popular rappers in the world. And this was a shift, though, and the reason why it was such an important shift is because the people who weren't selling people on feelings are left behind in the dust. It doesn't matter how much content they have, because in this way I'd say it relates to kind of facts, right? But that we want to give people whenever we're talking about, apologetic type stuff or whatever. But it didn't really matter, like, how much, how much better these other people were at, the messages that they had and that sort of thing too. The people that were still telling the messages got left behind, and that's just the way it is, because culture shifted at that point, from that point on. So you'll see most rappers and stuff like that today sound like Lil Wayne, because he really changed the whole style of how it's done.
How old was he when he started?
Oh, he was 11 or something like that when he started.
Dang.
Yeah. He's been famous since then, I think. 11 or 13, somewhere in there.
So really, he brought in a new generation of hip hop.
Yeah.
And he represented a new generation as well.
Yeah.
And so, interesting.
And that's like, I'd say Under Oath was one of the rock bands that was like that when it comes to like the kind of screamo music. They were kind of there at the forefront too. And then they kind of changed it. They kind of created a genre out of their sound, which is really interesting too. But yeah, so anyways, when it comes to that kind of hip hop too, so you kind of think about us today trying to communicate with people in culture, right? And it's the same kind of thing, I think, a lot of times when a lot of us are just kind of given a lot of data and dumping these facts on people like that, right? It's the same kind of thing. You're like left behind because culture, that's not even on culture's radar. Culture's radar is going to be more grounded into feelings. So
if we ask somebody why they like Lil Wayne, essentially what they're going to say is it makes them feel good. They're not going to say, well, I really identify with this message. It really helps me know who I am.
Yeah, I think people aren't going to probably necessarily know how to articulate it, but they'll say something like that, I just like it. It just feels good. It's fun or whatever, you know what I mean? Because that's what's important now.
Yeah, and the guys that still have messages in hip hop, if you ask people who like Lil Wayne, why do you not like these guys? They'll probably just say, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't like it. That's it.
Yeah, but yeah, that's right. Yeah, they probably just don't like it. I'd say it'd probably be something like that. And then so you got these people that are lyrical geniuses and all this other kind of stuff like that. And those people, they're just, they're left behind. And it's unfortunate because that's why people are always like, what happened to hip hop? There's a shift. But so to get into what we're talking about today, though, you can pick any hot topic, right? And you'll be able to see this kind of thinking in why it's an issue for the people. So take abortion. Okay, so with abortion, given that what we said is correct, right, and people don't care about the facts, they care about the feeling. The feelings are for their own personal selves. It's completely subjective, right? This is why we have so much subjectivity in today.
Right, because how somebody feels is going to be subject to every individual. You can't say everyone should feel this way about this or everyone should feel this way about that.
Yes, that's very important though, right? So that's kind of worth reiterating, because if it's true that people's personal feelings trump everything else, then we're in a society where it's not, the worst thing you can possibly do is what?
Give more facts.
Yeah, because what you're saying, if you're giving them facts, is that I don't care about how you feel.
Ooh, and the important part of communication now is feelings.
Yes, validating feelings, because think about that. I have so many thoughts about this, but I think everything essentially, all these kind of issues come down to something like this, and this is why I'd say it comes down to subjective morality people are fighting for, because that's linked with their identity in some sense. So if you say, if somebody says, they want to get an abortion, or they put it in some other language like I'm fighting for women's rights, and you give them a bunch of facts, then they see you as a monster, right?
Right, because essentially what they're saying is it always feels good to say that more people should have rights. Yep. And whatever someone else is saying against this has to feel bad because it's not for people's rights. And it's not really the rights that they're talking about. They're saying this just feels right. I just know that this is right.
Yes.
And don't confuse me with your data. Don't confuse me with your facts.
Yes.
It's a virtuous slogan,
yes.
as you always say.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely, and that's kind of the thing too. Is I think part of this happens because we're in a data age where there's so much information out there, and then online people don't know what's true and what's not, and people don't want to have to spend all the time sifting through all that. So the most comfortable place for them to go is inside. I'm assuming it's something like this. So they're like, well, all that I know I can trust is how I feel.
Yeah.
And that's what people are thinking.
Yeah, and that's being true to yourself. That's being authentic with how you feel. If this feels right to you, then it must be right. And and since we're stuck in this internal world, that's really all that we have.
Yes. And the worst thing you can do is tell people how to feel. Right?
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Let's have a debate over how we should feel.
yeah. Feelings debate.
Yeah.
Who can make who feel worse? But really, I mean, is that not what's happening in politics and everything else today?
Yeah. You should feel bad about this political person that you voted for.
Yeah.
You should feel bad because I'm clearly righteous and virtuous with this position because it feels right to me.
Yes, it's all a trait of that. And so you can see this probably most clearly acted out in the abortion debate with how people, I mean, is there a better example of postmodernism than this? It's like if the mom feels like the baby is a baby, it's a baby. If she doesn't feel like it's a baby, it's just a piece of tissue. It's it's a fetus or whatever language they want to call it. But essentially, what determines if it's a person or not is how she feels.
Yeah.
And this sounds bizarre if you're thinking factually, right? This just sounds ridiculous.
Oh, that makes sense. That's why it's a woman's right to choose. It's not so much just about the choice. It's about choosing based upon what feels authentic to her.
Yes, what feels authentic to her. It's insane because
you could have two women in the exact same situation pick exact opposite things, and you could say both of these choices in the exact same situation are authentically true to them because they're following how they feel.
Yes, and it's wrong for you to tell someone else to feel a different way.
Right.
It's the worst thing you can do in today's culture. That's what things come down to, right?
Oh yeah, that's why you can't tell somebody, oh, that's not racist, because it's racist or it's not racist depending upon how it makes them feel.
I never thought about that till now. You're right. Yep. So actually, why don't you tell that story about your neighbor?
So I live in an apartment complex and was talking to one of my neighbors. He said that he was walking his dog the other day and he saw somebody go and try to parallel park, which I'm not the best at either, but she hit a car and then drove up a little bit further, hit another car, and then they actually said, hey, are you going to stop and leave a note on the car? And she said, what? You're just saying that, you're just asking me this because I'm this minority. And they're like, no, we're saying this because you hit a car.
So that's the whole thing, because if she says that it's race, it's the same thing with like the Islam stuff, and we talked about this with Wood and stuff like that too. But a lot of people will say if you're against Islam, you're racist, right? You're like, Islam's not even a race. What are you talking about? But these words have subjective meanings because it's based on how people feel. So everything is subjective ultimately.
So arguments come down to trying to make the other person feel bad about their view, or you trying to make yourself feel good about your own view.
How do arguments today work? Like, what is the point? How do you know when you win? You win if you what? Shout somebody down and make them feel bad, and use these words that you can use subjectively too. They don't have to mean what the actual word means. You call someone a bigot, you don't have to use the actual definition of a bigot, because that's not what it is whenever people are using that word today. But when they say that, they're saying, I'm going to win because I'm saying you are a bad person, right? And that's how the debates are fought. So this is why it's different, because the debates is going to be different than cultural kind of peace, the happiness, right? Because in culture, they're like, the best thing to do is love everybody and all this, but that's subjective, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to how you feel. If they make me feel bad, I don't have to love them.
Because the things that make me feel good aren't necessarily going to be the same things that make you feel good.
Yep, that's right, and that's what things come down to. That's why it's a really strange world we live in. Yeah, so anyways, anything else you want to add on to that before we kind of wrap up?
I'm curious what you're going to say in the future when you figure out if this is really the cultural context. What do you end up doing?
Yeah, I think that's a super important question. So why don't it's getting dark here a little bit. So maybe we can just talk about that next time.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.